Here is the recap of the first 2 seasons of Tulsa King. An aged man named Dwight Manfredi is released from prison where he has been sitting for 25 years. He used to work for the New York Mafia, and all those years in prison he kept his mouth shut. Back to his boss Pete, Dwight finds out that he is too old, and his son Chicky is in charge of the organization. Dwight wants to return to the business, but they make it clear to him that he has nothing to do in New York. Then they suggest he go to godforsaken Tulsa. The big players do not control it, and there he can make a lot of money. Dwight realizes that they want to exile him. One of the generals tells him to know his place. Dwight beats him up, but can't disobey his boss Pete's orders. After that, he goes to Tulsa. When Dwight arrives, he meets a taxi driver named Tyson. He learns from him that pot is legal in this state and stops by a local store that sells it. At first, the conversation did not go well, but Dwight made it clear that his intentions were serious. Meeting with the owner of the store named Lawrence, he offers him protection. The man does not understand from whom he needs to protect him, as the business is legal and there were no problems before his arrival. However, Dwight is no fool. He realizes that although the business is legal, the law makes it very difficult to dispose of the money earned, and at any moment the FBI may rush in. That's why Lawrence most likely sells stuff under the table. Dwight is not mistaken and found several $1 million in the safe, but he has no intention of taking it. Now Dwight and Lawrence are partners. Dwight will solve all his problems and help to launder money, and Lawrence will give 20% of his proceeds. The man has no choice but to agree. Dwight realizes that he needs his own driver, so he offers Tyson, the taxi driver, a job, and the guy, who has long dreamed of a career as a gangster, gladly agrees. In the evening, Dwight meets Stacy and spends the night with her. We soon learn that she's an ATF agent. This is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Stacy receives a routine mailing from the FBI that a mob member named Dwight Manfredi has been released from prison. The woman immediately recognizes him as the man she recently slept with. If anyone finds out that she has anything to do with him, her career will be over. That is why she, throughout the season, helps him to get out of various minor troubles and tries to get the FBI away from him. Plus, she really likes Dwight, so she continues to sleep with him. Meanwhile, Vince is Chicky's sidekick, whom Dwight broke his jaw for earlier in the season, wants revenge. But Chicky makes a deal with Dwight to make it up to him with money. Soon, Dwight mails some of the money to his boss, as he should, but learns that to pay for the parcel you need a credit card, and cash is now not accepted everywhere. Together with Tyson, he goes to the bank to get a debit card, but it turns out that his driver's license has expired, so now he has to pass his driving test. A ranch worker named Armand happens to notice Dwight. It turns out he used to be a bandit, and he worked together with Dwight. But then certain events caused him to flee to Tulsa. He lived here for over 20 years, had a wife and kids. But when Dwight showed up, Armand thought he had been sent here to kill him, so Armand decided to be proactive. While Dwight is taking his driving test, Armand drives up to him in his car and shoots him, but the assassination attempt fails. So Armand burns his car and wonders what to do next. Dwight at first thinks it's the Vince with the broken jaw. It's his revenge, but Chicky assures him it's not. Eventually, Dwight finds himself on Armand's trail. However, when everything falls into place and Dwight learns the reason for the assassination attempt, he forgives the man and informs him that Armand now works for him and must somehow bring in income. Dwight finds out from Lawrence exactly who is selling him the product. He goes there, where he meets Jimmy. Dwight bargains a better price from him, which earns him Lawrence's respect. After a while, Dwight learns that people in town like to use laughing gas at parties. Just in the near future, there will be a festival in Tulsa, and Dwight realizes that he can make a lot of money from it. He meets the owner of a roadside bar named Mitch and orders gas tanks through him. However, when Dwight's friends started their business, local bikers came to them, who were making money on it themselves. They took away the cylinders and money from the main characters. Meanwhile, ATF agent Stacy has been trying for years to put Waltrip, the head of these bikers, in jail, but he is very cunning and does not give a reason for arrest. Dwight realizes that even though there are a lot of bikers, they have to protect their territory. So he gathers all his men and attacks them, takes back the tanks and the money. Dwight learns that his brother has died, as he has been ill for a long time. Soon he returns to New York without informing his boss. Chicky is angry with Dwight's behavior, and despite the fact that he sends money faithfully, wants to get rid of him somehow. However, his father Pete does not want to listen to his son. Meanwhile, Dwight attends his brother's funeral, where he meets his daughter Tina, with whom he has not communicated for more than 18 years. She is angry at her father and wants nothing to do with him, but actually still loves him. They end up talking a bit, and Tina agrees to introduce her children to their grandfather someday. Also, Dwight learns that one of Pete's generals harassed Tina years ago. He loses his temper and kills the villain in front of the whole gang. Chicky thinks that Dwight should be gotten rid of, but his father again forbids him to do anything about it. However, Chicky cannot leave it so easily, so he begins to intimidate Dwight's daughter, and soon even beats up her husband at night in an alleyway. Dwight can't prove that Chicky did it, and asks his daughter and her family to come to Tulsa where he can protect them. She is at first hesitant to do so, but when the threats against her are repeated, Tina moves to Tulsa with her children and husband. While Dwight was in New York, the bikers decided to teach the main characters a lesson. They send corrupt cops to Tyson, as well as intimidate Lawrence. However, the protagonists stood their ground. Meanwhile, the FBI finally learns that Dwight Manfredi is in Tulsa. That is why it conducts a full-fledged check of all his connections. Agents interrogate Lawrence, but he does not tell them anything. Then they search the store, but the safe where the unaccounted money was supposed to be is empty. Turns out Dwight found out the FBI was preparing a raid and stole the money from his partner, then returned it to him. Soon biker leader Waltrip decides to meet with Dwight and mark the borders, but the protagonist makes it clear that he is not going to cooperate with him. At night, Mitch's bar is attacked by a biker, and the main characters manage to fight back. After that, they bury the corpse of the attacker. Dwight realizes that the war cannot be avoided, so he begins to prepare his men for battle. He also hires a few more desperate guys thanks to Jimmy, from whom they buy stuff. A little earlier, Dwight notices a white horse running around town, and Spencer, a waitress, tells him that the naughty stallion is always running away from the stable. Soon Dwight learns that the old horse is going to be put to sleep. For some reason, he feels some kind of kinship with him and offers the waitress a job. Dwight buys the animal, takes it to the ranch, and entrusts Spencer to look after him. There he meets the owner of the ranch named Margaret. They develop an affection for each other and have dinner together. Lawrence tells Dwight that the store is not the only way he makes money. It turns out he has an impressive amount of funds in cryptocurrency, but it's not easy to withdraw it, and it's even harder to launder. So Dwight comes up with a plan. He wants to invest in a casino out of Mitch's bar. The building is on Native American land, which means the laws are different, and it's easy to launder money. They sign Jimmy over the casino and make him their business partner. Chicky can no longer tolerate his father's inactivity. He drowns the old man in the bathtub, and after the funeral becomes the leader of their criminal organization. Chicky convinces the other generals to go to Tulsa and kill Dwight. Some are not happy with this decision after all. He is one of the generals, respected and steadily brings income. However, Chicky does not intend to retreat, and with his cronies goes to Tulsa, where he is going to attack Dwight. Except Dwight learns about it. He finds Chicky in the hotel, and having surrounded him, informs him that he will no longer work for him. Dwight offers his old friend Goody to come over to his side if he doesn't want to work for douchebag Chicky either. Goody agrees and joins Dwight. Meanwhile, we learn that ATF agent Stacy has an informant named Roxy. She had to dig up some information on Waltrip in order to put him behind bars. Soon the woman notices the biker leader's laptop, where she sees his financial records. She tells Stacy about it, and the ATF agent orders Roxy to get that laptop. However, Waltrip catches the woman and kills her. During the night, Stacy and Dwight meet again, and at that moment, they are attacked by bikers. They seriously injure the woman and Dwight is left until the ambulance arrives. Because of this, Stacy's connection to a former mobster becomes known. We find out why Dwight was sent to prison. Turns out 25 years ago, Chicky and his cronies tortured a member of his gang. They handcuffed him to a pipe and accidentally started a fire. When Dwight arrived, he tried to save his friend, but he couldn't unhook the handcuffs, so he killed the man to keep him from being burned alive. Just at that moment, the police arrived, arrested the protagonist, and accused him of killing the man. In modern times, Dwight wants revenge on Waltrip for Stacy and learns about the laptop containing his bank accounts. The main characters eventually gain access to this laptop and steal all the money from there. Dwight, feeling guilty about Stacy's suspension, transfers $1 million to her. After a while, the main characters are relaxing in a bar and hear the approach of motorcycles. They were ready for the arrival of bikers and without losses kill their entire group, including their leader Waltrip. 3 months pass and Mitch's bar turns into an elite casino. Everything seems to be going well, but when Dwight goes out on the street, he is arrested by the FBI for the fact that he can be said to have bribed an official. It's the same $1 million he gave Stacy. Turns out by ratting out Dwight, she was able to get back on the job. This is the end of the first season. Dwight ends up in jail. He's accused of bribing a public official. But during the trial, Dwight convinces the jury that it was a gift to a friend for saving his life. So he's found not guilty. Soon after, he visits Stacy and tells her he's not mad at her, after which he leaves Tulsa. Earlier, when Dwight was sent to prison, he met a man who had been arrested for financial fraud involving wind farms. Dwight realizes that he can take advantage of this. He offers to buy these power plants at a large discount in exchange for protection in prison. He plans to use these wind turbines to power his own hydroponic stations for growing weed. This will ultimately save them a huge amount of money. Dwight also agrees that, in exchange for a percentage of the goods sold, the stations will be serviced by Native Americans. This brings Dwight even closer to them. Soon, Dwight meets the largest supplier of medical marijuana in Tulsa, a guy named Thrasher. Dwight wants to work with him, but Thrasher acts arrogantly and says he won't tolerate competition. The man also calls Bill Bevilacqua and informs him that the New York Mafia has appeared in his territory. It turns out that Tulsa belongs to Bill and his clan, but since it's such a hole, no one has done business there. Bill considers this a declaration of war. He calls Chicky and learns that Dwight is now working separately from the New York Mafia. Bill arrives in Tulsa and demands that Dwight pay a percentage for operating in his territory. But Dwight sends him away, as he considers Tulsa to be no man's land. In the end, Bill conspires with Chicky, and together they plan to kill Dwight with the help of Goody, who is currently working for Dwight. However, Goody has no intention of betraying Dwight, and together they kill the hired killer. After that, they deliver his corpse to the gates of Bill's mansion. Bill is unhappy that his man was killed. He believes that Chicky is partly to blame, so he demands that Chicky resolve the issue. Soon they decide to meet with Dwight to discuss everything peacefully, as war only hurts business. They agree to meet on neutral territory, but on the way, Chicky forgets to put away his gun, for which he is arrested at the airport. That is why Vince arrives at the meeting instead of him. There, Dwight and Bill agree on a partnership, even though Bill is not happy with the deal. Vince, on the other hand, leaves empty-handed. When he returns to New York, Chicky is furious at the outcome and blames everyone around him. Chicky is actually a terrible leader. One day he gets drunk and starts talking too much. Vince and the other capos realize that it was Chicky who killed his father. After that, Vince decides to remove Chicky and take his place. He persuades the higher-ranking mafia leaders, and in the end, Chicky is forced to leave. Let's go over some of the highlights of this season that will most likely only be important in the next season. Joanna, Dwight's sister, comes to Tulsa. She doesn't want to sit around doing nothing, so her brother gives her the opportunity to prove herself in their business. Just at this time, they open a new store, which looks very good for such a small town. Dwight's daughter Tina and her family buy a house in Tulsa and plan to live there. However, because of everything that has happened, her father sends her back to New York for a while. Dwight decides to expand his business. He buys a car dealership and makes Mitch the frontman. Mitch also introduces Dwight to his cousin Bigfoot, and the big guy becomes part of their gang. Meanwhile, Dwight falls in love with Margaret, and they become a couple. Armand's personal life is not going well. His wife left him, his house was taken away, and he has to pay child support. On top of that, he is unable to bring in enough income for Dwight. Tresher finds out about this and gives Armand money, but in return asks him to leak seemingly insignificant information about Dwight's activities. It turns out that some time ago, Tresher began working with the Triads, the Chinese Mafia, giving them the opportunity to grow weed on his land. However, their leader Ming became arrogant and began growing poppies for opium production as well. Tresher is unhappy with this, and in response, sends Ming's men to destroy Dwight's wind turbines. However, the main characters manage to fight back and the Chinese return crippled. Ming considered this a weakness and decided to take care of Dwight himself. He sends his men to plant a bomb in his car, but at that very moment, Mark, Tyson's father, gets into the car. However, the man miraculously survives. Tyson thinks that Bill's men did it, and despite Dwight's warnings, goes to Kansas City to get revenge. Everything goes wrong, and he is spotted. Tyson wounds one of Bill's men and runs away. This misunderstanding fuels even more hatred, and the main characters prepare for war. Bill sends his hitmen to Tulsa, and they open fire on Dwight's men. Jimmy dies as a result. Meanwhile, Dwight learns that Armand has been sharing information with Thrasher. Now Armand fears for his life and asks Thrasher for help, but Thrasher no longer sees any use for him and sends him away. Armand takes a desperate step. He decides to rob Dwight's casino. The man takes $500,000 and runs away. At this time, Ming decides to take over Thrasher's business and threatens him into transferring all his land to him. Thrasher goes to Bill, with whom they used to work. He tells him that the Triads won't stop with him, and that it was Ming who blew up the car that started it all. Dwight, Bill, and Thrasher meet to discuss the situation and agree to join forces to get rid of the Triads. Just then, Armand realizes what a stupid mistake he has made. He returns to Dwight and apologizes, then promises to lure the Chinese Mafia into a trap. He succeeds, and the main characters defeat their opponents. Tyler kills Ming. Because of him, his father almost died. After that, they bury his body on Margaret's ranch. Dwight meets with Thrasher and tells him that it is only thanks to him that he is still alive. Therefore, as compensation, he will take over his entire weed-growing business. Thrasher has no choice but to agree to this condition. Dwight also learns that Chicky no longer has any power in New York, and that Vince is now in charge. Meanwhile, Vince informs Chicky that the New York Mafia bosses will forgive him if he persuades Dwight to return. Chicky goes to Tulsa and meets with him, but Dwight sends him away. Chicky then teams up with Bill and again offers to kill him. Bill still has a grudge against Dwight because after the last mess, he wanted an equal share of Thrasher's business, but Dwight offered him only 25%. They come to him at the casino, but surprisingly, Bill kills Chicky. Dwight is impressed by this act and agrees to divide Thrasher's business equally. Some time passes and Dwight can finally relax. However, suddenly at night, unknown people break into his apartment, put a bag over his head, and take him to a room where a man tells him that Dwight now works for them. This is the end of the second season. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.